All right, let's jump right into it. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're literally tearing into the global market section of the Securities Industry Essentials exam. Oh, and real quick, this explainer is brought to you by CertFuel. If you're completely over dry, boring textbooks, CertFuel has this amazing full SIE course. We're talking adaptive quizzes, smart flashcards, and unlimited practice exams that are weighted exactly like the real thing. It actually helps you learn, not just rotely memorize. Check them out at certfuel.com. Okay, grab a coffee, get hyper-focused, and let's conquer the global economy.
Like I said, definitely check out certfuel.com when you're ready to take your studying up a notch. Now, let's get into the good stuff.
So, I want you to meet our very first character today. This is Sam the student. Now, Sam just landed a killer job at a massive, brand new Japanese auto factory that was built right in the middle of Ohio. So here's your first test day scenario. Does the output of this factory count toward US GDP or US GNP? I want you to hit pause right here and lock in your answer. Seriously, pause it. Do you have it?
Okay, so before I give you the answer, you absolutely have to lock this exact word-for-word memory aid into your brain. GDP equals within borders, meaning domestic. GNP equals by citizens, meaning national. Say it out loud if you have to.
It really boils down to a battle of abbreviations. When you see these on the test, always spell them out in your head. Gross domestic product is entirely about location. It's just asking, where was it made? If the answer is within US borders, boom, it's GDP. Gross national product, on the other hand, is entirely about ownership. It asks who made it. If it's made by US citizens or companies, literally regardless of where they are on planet Earth, it's GNP.
So what's the answer to Sam's dilemma? Well, brace yourself because this is a massive exam trap. That Japanese auto factory in Ohio counts toward US GDP because it's physically made right here within US borders. But it does not count toward US GNP because the ownership is Japanese. The test makers love to bait you with this exact scenario. Or, they'll flip it and use an American tech company operating overseas. In that case, it'd be US GNP, but not GDP. Do not fall for it.
Let's shift gears for just a second. I want you to burn the number 2 into your memory. This is a magic number for your exam. The official, commonly cited definition of a recession is exactly 2 consecutive quarters of declining real GDP. And hey, pay close attention to the word real there. Real GDP adjusts for inflation. Nominal GDP does not. If a question tries to trick you with nominal GDP, you just confidently say, nope, nice try. It takes 2 quarters of declining real GDP.
Section 1. Balance of payments. Tracking the flow.
All right. Let's meet Riley the representative. Riley is this total government numbers geek who tracks the balance of payments. Basically, Riley looks at 2 main buckets that sit on opposite sides of a scale. On one side, you've got the current account. This tracks the trade of physical goods and services. Then, on the other side, you've got the capital account. That one tracks investment flows, so things like foreign purchases of US stocks, bonds, and real estate. And this perfectly illustrates a core economic rule. When one of these accounts runs a deficit, the other typically runs a surplus. They just roughly balance each other out.
Time for another interactive challenge. Riley the representative looks at the current account and sees that the US has a trade deficit. Based purely on that specific word, deficit, does the US import more or less than it exports? Pause the explainer right now and lock it in.
We've got another exam trap. If you guessed less, you just fell for a total classic. A trade deficit actually means the US imports more than it exports. It sounds backwards, right? But the word deficit here simply means the US is spending more money abroad, buying up foreign goods, than it's actually earning by selling its own goods overseas.
Section 2. Exchange rates and the tractor math. Let's bring in our third character, Ivy the investor. Ivy deals with the absolute headache of exchange rates, which is just the price of one currency expressed in terms of another. Think of a strong, appreciating dollar like a massive discount coupon for US consumers at a foreign store. It makes all our imported goods cheaper. But on the flip side, a weak, depreciating dollar makes those exact same imports way more expensive.
Okay, I want to put you in Ivy's shoes for a second. Let's say she is a US exporter. She builds this heavy, massive equipment right here in the States and tries to sell it to buyers over in Europe. Does a strong dollar help or hurt her exporting business? Hit pause and think about it.
Ding, 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 another exam trap. A strong dollar actively hurts US exporters like Ivy. The exam absolutely loves to test your intuition here.
Sure, a strong dollar is fantastic if you're a consumer buying imported goods, but it is an absolute nightmare if you're trying to sell your American-made products to the rest of the world. Let me show you exactly why this happens.
Let's break down Ivy's tractor math. Say Ivy sells a tractor for $50,000 US. When the exchange rate is perfectly even, a European buyer pays 50,000 euros. Totally fair. But what if the US dollar suddenly strengthens by 25% against the euro? Ivy still needs her 50,000 US dollars to break even, but now that European buyer has to cough up 62,500 euros just to match Ivy's price. So the European buyer naturally says, no way, that's way too expensive, and completely walks away. Ivy doesn't lose money on the per unit price. Instead, she loses her mind because her sales volume just drops off a cliff. The demand is totally wiped out.
Section 3. The ripple effect, connecting it all. You can think of the global market as a giant set of dominoes, and the Federal Reserve is the one pushing the first one over. Watch this flow really closely. Step 1, the Fed raises the federal funds rate. Step 2, the US dollar strengthens. Step 3, because the dollar is strong, imports get way cheaper for us, but our exports become super expensive for foreigners, just like Ivy's tractor. And finally, Step 4, because we're buying more cheap imports and selling way fewer expensive exports, the trade deficit widens. But wait a second, why does raising interest rates strengthen the dollar back in Step 2? The source material actually nails this perfectly. It says, foreign investors want a piece of those higher yields, so they sell their own currency to buy dollars. It's that simple. When the Fed raises rates, U.S. bonds and bank deposits pay out way more. Foreign investors see those juicy yields, dump their local currency, and scoop up U.S. dollars so they can invest in those U.S. assets. That massive, rapid surge in demand for the dollar drives the exchange rate straight up. Now let's just run that exact same scenario in reverse. During a recession, the Fed naturally lowers interest rates. Because of that, the dollar weakens since foreign investors take their money elsewhere looking for better yields. Because the dollar is weak, our imports get really expensive, but our exports suddenly become cheap and super attractive to foreign buyers. And as a direct result, the trade deficit narrows. See how it all connects?
Okay, you made it through the logic chains. Now it's time for the rapid-fire recap. I'm going to pound these testable points into your brain one last time so they stick. First up, gross domestic product counts production strictly within borders. Gross national product counts production by U.S. citizens no matter where they are physically located. And a recession? That is exactly 2 consecutive quarters of declining real GDP.
Recap 2. If Riley the representative sees a trade deficit, it means U.S. imports exceed exports. We are literally spending more abroad than we earn. And remember that balance of payment scale? A current account deficit is typically offset by a capital account surplus. They almost always move in opposite directions.
Moving to recap 3. Think of Ivy's tractor. A strong dollar acts just like a discount coupon, making imports cheaper and really helping U.S. consumers. But it absolutely crushes U.S. exporters because it destroys the foreign demand for their products. A weak dollar does the exact reverse.
And finally, recap 4. The domino effect. Higher U.S. interest rates strengthen the dollar. And why is that? Because foreign investors desperately want those higher bond yields, so they buy up dollars to get them, which completely drives up the currency's value.
So you've seen the traps. You know Sam, Riley, and Ivy's stories, and you have completely mastered the directional flow of the global economy. The only question left is, are you ready to walk into that testing center and just utterly crush the global economic factors on your SIE exam? I absolutely think you are. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and hey, happy studying.